call the meeting to order. The meeting of the Council for the Town of Washington for October 10th, 2022. We have an agenda before us, and I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda. Before we make any additions or deletions, I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Are there any changes?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Your old business.
Yep.
If you would add in the zoning fees,
All right.
which was tabled from September.
All right, so we'll make that C, and then I'd like to add D, something that we discussed at our last meeting, which was requests from the Trinity Episcopal Church to close Gay Street, the one block of Gay Street between Warren and Jet for Halloween night for safety purposes. So we'll add that as D under old business.
Was cross street, other cross street, Warren and
Jet,
Yeah.
J-E-T-T.
Good idea.
And with that, are there any other additions or deletions? As the maker of the motion, are you okay with those additions?
I am.
As the second, are you all right, Brad?
yes.
All right. So we have the amended agenda, both moved and second, and roll call vote to approve. Jean?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That fuzzy sound was Gail saying yes.
Hello, yes.
All right.
Turn off my phone.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, we have two sets of minutes before us. The meeting from September 12th, our regular council meeting minutes, and then the joint public hearing meeting minutes with the joint meeting with the Planning Commission. Can we have a motion? Probably because of the nature of the things, we should probably have a motion just for the September 12th meeting first. A motion to approve the minutes,
I so move.
and a second.
I second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? If not, then a roll call vote to approve the minutes from September 12, 2022.
Yes.
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 And then we have the special, the joint public hearing meeting minutes from September 26. And I have a motion to approve.
I so move.
Thank you. And a second.
I second.
Thank you, Jean. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, roll call vote to approve.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you. Considering that we have a crowded agenda for tonight, I will hold off from any of my long-winded comments as mayor tonight and leave it as that and quickly pass it on to Ms. Swift for the treasurer's report.
Oh, thank you. First, ta-da!
Since I didn't want to steal her thunder. anyway.
Our awesome town administrator / clerk has made my report look pretty moving forward.
There you go.
But I think this is great that we're now going to be able to actually see, and someday we'll actually have a screen somewhere where we can project it up on. But thank you, Barbara, for putting it into such a pretty and useful just a couple of notes you'll see in the next quarter's report, just in case you think we're not spending enough money, don't worry about that.
Everything I see on there is about 15%, whereas this is going through October 10th, so we should have been through a quarter of the year. So I'm just assuming
It
that
goes
expenses and
through October 1.
okay, and it goes through October 1. So we've done
So
okay, so
we-
that's about right.
Yeah, and we've
Okay.
got coming up the billing for a lot of the water system and all of that. We still have that to come in, and we also have the wastewater treatment plant payment next month, another $98,000.
And then income lags usually
right.
a little bit.
Income is always a month behind,
Okay.
just because of everybody having 30 days. And what I'm hoping, and Barbara and I will do a tight reconciliation after the loan is paid, I'm hoping that we can move 25, if not 50, up to the LGIP and make another good step to our goal of having a year's coverage up there. So
That'd be nice
that
to have.
that will make me very happy. I would like to make a motion that we release the second quarter fiscal year funds so that Barbara can go spend it.
This would be from October 1 through December 31?
Yes.
All right. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a second from Mr. Whitehead. Any questions or additions or corrections? If not, roll call vote to approve. Jean?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Just one last quick note, we got so far busy and behind that the tap and hookup fees will be published, and we will be having a public hearing at the November meeting.
Okay.
And that's just the standard 6% that we've already talked about.
Okay. All right. Mr. Krim, I'm sorry I gave you that last-minute assignment. Pull you back over to join us.
Thank you, sir. Couple things to report on. I'm continuing to work on the Leggett Lane road maintenance agreement in relation to the Rush River Phase 1 project. Leggett Lane, of course, is a private street that is owned by the town, so that's why there's a necessary maintenance agreement. We have a couple of other items that are on the agenda, so I won't speak to those, but I did want to let you know that, as I understand it, the County Board of Supervisors has approved the path license for the courthouse property, and so as I'm going to confirm where we stand with the county attorney, but I expect that we'll be able to move forward on that and to use that agreement as a template for other agreements for use of property for recreational trails. And then, as you mentioned, Mayor, you did task me just now with a resolution for the Trinity Episcopal Church street closure for October 31st, and I have a draft.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that so quickly. I'm sorry I threw that to you at the last second.
That's fine.
I figured you could handle it.
Yes.
So, Mr. Garrison.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief, but my report's in your agenda. Probably the largest item or task to take care of soon is the Rush River site plan. And I've met with Brad about that and have some comments, and talked to the civil engineer reviewing the plans. And hopefully I'll have those comments all compiled fairly shortly.
Right.
The other things are fairly minor, but one item I wanted to point out, Town Council, is I have talked to a consultant regarding the GIS mapping to update the zoning map and sewer and water maps. Get a response from them fairly soon.
All right, sir. Thank you. Public Works Committee.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
this? The post office and occupancy permit has been requested? I mean, it's been occupied for like 5 months.
That's correct.
At least. I mean, when I've had a building built, we had to have a permit before we occupied.
So there was an occupancy permit request from the, of course, developer, and there were things that needed to be done inside. But we're waiting for a site plan, as-built site plan for most of the exterior work. Shows the relocation of some of the utilities and location of landscaping and signage and things. That as-built site plan hasn't completed yet.
And whose responsibility is that?
It's the developer. So that would be,
Who is also the
Tim
owner of the
Hedrick.
property.
so it would be Tim.
Mid-Atlantic Postal properties, I think is what they're called.
So we're waiting for that.
Okay, so the occupancy permit can't be done until the site plan is submitted?
Pretty much, yeah. That's the final.
Yeah.
So does he have a temporary CO?
He's operating under a temporary right now.
Okay.
So I want to get that site plan and make sure it's correct, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we can issue the final.
It just seems typical of this
Yeah.
whole endeavor, that everything is delayed.
Yeah, and if I can just add one thing, Steve and I discussed, when we were going over the plans, is that we want to have the master set of all drawings reside in Barbara's office. And that as changes are made to any sheet in that drawing set, they are added to the master set, but the sheet that's been edited also remains, so that we have a chronology, and then when it's all said and done, get as-built and final approval.
This is on every project moving forward, not just the
Yes.
post office.
Yes.
Is it, to build on to that, a question is, would we have the ability at some point to get that digitized? I hear stories about, and again, the chance of this happening is infinitesimally small, but I've always heard about fires at town halls and things like that, that wiped out the whole. So do we have the availability at some point to digitize that?
Well, it is,
Or Steve?
Digital.
we would get a PDF
Oh, we
version
would.
of it, yeah.
Okay.
So we would be able to
Okay.
store it somewhere.
Good.
Safe.
In the cloud.
Issue
Yeah.
a separate sheet as a PDF, we can then insert it into that larger document.
I apologize that I still live in the 20th century
No,
in terms of
Right.
many
Fine.
parts of my head.
18th century.
18th century. I'm looking for a Scribner. All right. Anything, so that was the question for Mr. Guyerson. That's resolved. Public Works Committee.
Oh,
Do we really want
I don't know which way to go.
We've been busy, Barbara can tell us the exact numbers, because I don't have those off the top of my head, in terms of the water meters that have been installed, which we're down to
24?
5 or 6 left. And those are ones that are going to require some relocation, some other additional plumbing and stuff. But the system is live. It's done remarkably well in what it's demonstrating. She's able to gather data actually in real time. Because in your packet is a sample of 2 errors that came up on 2 different properties. And you'll see one shows a continuous reading of 2 gallons a minute. That turned out to be a leaking toilet. So when alert came through, Barbara called the homeowner, they identified it, they fixed it, and that fix will save about 1,400 gallons per year. Barbara, was it? A month. So that's 1,400 gallons that we are not processing,
Wow.
treating, and going directly to a sewer.
It got caught this morning and it was fixed within an hour.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. And then the
Been,
other one.
What, 14 total residents we've been able to notify of leaks? 19.
Yeah, and then the other one is a larger problem that's ongoing, and Barbara's working with that property owner. Because of the way their system is set up, they can turn valves on and off to try and isolate where this leak is occurring so they can go in and get it fixed.
Great.
So the system is really doing a great job. And what's valuable about what we've done, in fact, Joe and I talked about it this afternoon a little bit. In today's world, when you're dealing with climate change and all the effects, right now, we have plenty of water, but who knows what next summer is going to be. So protection of our water resources is paramount. Any municipality has the same level of concern. So we're doing a great deal by just being able to find those little leaks, get them solved, maintain accuracy of our water system. So with what's been installed now, I'm going to go back to LB Water to talk to them about whether we can get a transmitter added to the water tower so that we can get readings of how much water is there and then relay that through the same wireless network that the water meters are on back to to do two things. One is to have that data available at Barbara's disposal, but also to go back to the pump house to tell the pumps when to go on and off. Because right now, we rely on a phone system, a phone cable, and it's forever going out. The switch is bad. They have a long lead time to get a switch. But with the pressure transmitter, I think we can resolve that in.
That's great.
So again, it just
Also
keeps-
pay a fortune for a phone line at the.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, we start
me grumpy.
eliminating some of these little expenditures in that regard. So, our water system, the metering system is doing exceptionally well. We have other things that have to be addressed with our water system for security and safety going forward. I won't go into all of those. We're going to have a tour, and at which time we can discuss what some of those are.
Okay.
The priorities right now, in my mind, based on what we're doing, is on the water system. Our sewer system is pretty sound. We do have improvements and changes we want to make. They're not urgent, because the system is working very well as it stands. We're producing high-quality water. We're not in violations. We've had a few components that we had some issues with. We've resolved those with the vendors. So all in all, our sewer system is working well. But our real focus right now needs to be on our water system.
Speaking of which, several months ago, Mr. Geyerson and I had conversations with people from the state about water, about trying to get another well.
The second well, yes.
And it became clear from the conversation that the likelihood is that the funds that are available are loans that can be waived, or I guess that would be the right term, forgiven, if you meet certain criteria, which, as a quick assessment, the town of Washington probably is not going to be able to meet. Therefore, I think it would behoove us, since this is an important issue, that we begin thinking about how much it would cost for us to do a new well and build it into our budget to go forward.
Yeah, there's a whole series of things that is one of them. Replacing the filter system is another one because of the age and condition of it.
And also the piping we talked about?
The piping to the water tower, because as our system sits right now, and I had a conversation with Gary Curry, and he brought up an interesting point. The way our system works right now is that the pump turns on, water goes through the filters, it is sent into town, it serves whatever the town demand is at that instant, and then any excess capacity goes to the water tower.
Right.
The way systems are supposed to be designed is that you pump to the water tower. The water tower is what generates the pressure and distribution to the town. Now, one of the issues, and it's not something that says, oh, we got to concern about this, is that we don't get the turnover in the tank, in our reservoir, that we should. So we chlorinate, so our water is safe, but we're not getting the turnover that would be normally experienced. And that's something that, again, we need to address. Okay. So, there's a whole sort of series of these issues. And when it comes to the second well, it's a matter of identifying it. Then how much do we develop that well? Do we tie it to the existing piping?
Right.
So there's a lot of...
So before we go to that point, can I task to the whatever you guys, the Public Works Committee and to Ms. Swift to begin pulling together a estimate of how much the cost would be?
Yes.
Or get the cost and give them to Ms. Swift? I don't mean to throw you under the
Like I
bus.
say, there's about 4 or 5 items that are
Yeah,
sort of in that group.
Mhm.
And and we'll start to zero in.
And Steve has some people we can talk to about
Yeah.
it.
And I've got data on our existing filter system, so I'm going to get some budgetary estimates on that, some other items,
All right.
so that we can get that all put together.
Well, it won't be long before we go into the next budget process. And,
Right.
you know, if it's something, what was clear is we can certainly apply for the loan, and that would allow it to be amortized over a period of time, if that is
Correct.
what the town wants to do.
Right.
But it would be nice to know, before we go to that point, kind of what is the total estimated cost of what this might be.
Right, and again, we want to do that on the water, we want to do the same thing on the wastewater system. And then with those, the other thing is to go back and let's start digging through the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill, because there is monies in there for small communities, which we may qualify for where we didn't on something else.
Right.
And to do some of that, I will probably be partnering up with VML, because they do have some people, and they're really experts, because they've really dug through the rules. And when I met with them, when I went to the FOIA meeting, they said, oh yeah, we've got some people, and that's all they're doing, so they'd be able to help us.
Great, great. That's wonderful. All right, well then, sounds like you were ready to take on that task
Yes, yes.
at some point. I know you have a lot of things, and I want to just give you and Joe a huge thank you for all the work that you've done. And Barbara, I know you did a lot of work in getting these meters up and running, so thank you for that. It is really spectacular that we have this. And
Yeah, and we can thank Atrium Construction, because those guys really hopped to and,
Yeah.
and got, I mean, I was expecting them to do, 3-4 meters. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, they did a dozen, in a day.
Oh, yeah, I'd see Barbara chasing Atrium around, and all the vehicles would be like, phew,
Yeah.
it was amazing, so.
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
And now that the system's up, VML said that they would like to have an article done for their
Oh,
monthly magazine. And but Chuck Leahy and I are talking about a couple of other articles in other national publications, because it's such a great story of what we as a very little town have done to bring ourselves right to the cutting edge in our water metering system. So,
it's a little frightening to think of the town of Washington at the cutting edge of something. But it's kudos to you, so thank you.
and I'll just, one of the last thing, as long as we're on that, in the water system, well, it's actually two things. One is that we're going to look at the generator that's out at the pump house, because it is old.
Okay,
It's an old system. We were
It's also
able
not
to-
automatic, which is part of the problem. I can just see Brad and I down
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The,
with a hand crank.
yeah, it is old. We were able to sell a piece of unneeded equipment from the wastewater plant, and that generated $3,000. So, we think there's some little monies here and there that will ultimately pay for that. So that's that. The last thing I'll add is that we had an assessment done, or inspection done, as a requirement of our bond, and they looked at our water system and our wastewater system, and they generated a report. Interestingly enough, several of the items in there are things that I want to do anyway, but probably the main thing that visibly people would see as a change is to add a gate at the wastewater plant. They recommended fencing the whole thing in, which right now is not feasible
Right.
economically or otherwise, but at least if we have a gate and some signage, Town of Washington Waterworks, no entry or whatever. So I'm going to try to work and find someone who can dig those gate posts. We can get a couple of gates from the co-op and put that in, and I think that would pretty much satisfy that requirement.
All right, we also, one of the trails that we have right now goes from the school around the wastewater plant to Lake Lane, so we may need to think about some fencing along that side.
That could be something, yeah. Again, and that's one of those items in that long list of all the improvements that we want to make. So,
Okay.
But the first thing is they just provide some level of security.
Right.
If you want to get out of your car and walk through the ditch, you can do that.
Right,
But you can't drive up to the building.
right.
And that, I think, will be one of the first things we take a look at. But other than that, again, we're not in real bad shape. The report wasn't, scathing or anything.
Yeah,
So.
that's great.
I'm pretty happy with everything.
All right, thank you so much.
Yep.
I see that we don't have a representative from the Planning Commission, and Mr. Beard, who is our liaison to the Planning Commission, is not here tonight, nor do I see a report. They have a meeting occurring at the end of this month?
Correct.
All right. She doesn't know for sure, and you say that's correct. That's correct, confirming what she's saying?
I've talked to the chair that I don't think we're going to have a meeting.
Okay, but it's still up in the air.
Today is the cutoff date for applications, and we haven't received any, so I'm going to relay that.
No pending action.
I'm going to
There's
relay
no
that
pending
to her.
action, so the presumption is that there will be no meeting at the end of this month.
The Planning Commission did express that they wanted to have a sort of a work walk session. You give me a little bit of history on the town itself, and we haven't set a date for that, but I don't think
Okay.
at their next regular scheduled time. It'll be sometime during the day.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I also notice we have no representative from the Architectural Review Board. They have a meeting on Monday? All right, do you know how many applications they have? 3? All right. I will be out of town on Monday, so I will not be able to attend that
I
meeting.
can probably go.
Okay, are you around?
You're going to be at the ARB meeting?
It can be.
All right, well, as long as we have some representative from the
Is
town.
that going to involve that? Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
all
then I'll
should be
definitely
there.
be at the ARB.
All right,
That's on the 17th.
all right. Holiday party. We are confirming it's on December 11th. We did not put down the time. I'm assuming 6 o'clock time? Does that sound familiar?
5. Yeah, but
Start at
it's
5.
early. It's
Yeah.
usually like 5 to
It's
7.
still a little daylight.
We're getting
out of
older.
practice,
We'll
yeah.
go 5 p.m.
5 to 7
All right,
works
5 to
yeah.
7. All right, we're doing 5 to 7. Jean Godine and I will serve as the co-coordinators. But I would like to ask all of the members of town council to pitch in. I know Joe and I have been, I've slacked the last couple of years, Joe, and deserted you, but I will be there to help you to do the town, and we'll do a trip down to get the garnishments for the county. We will go ahead and do the wreaths for the county offices again this year. We'll start pulling together that list. I think we've probably got those in the records. So we'll look at that maybe the end of this week and start pulling that together.
Question about actually how this will be handled since it's a new venue. And the decorations that were ample here look very paltry.
Where are we moving?
To the gym over at
Why
the
aren't we doing
school.
that?
We were doing it over there because we were getting cramped here, and we're also in the middle of a period where there's a potential for a COVID return. So we've reserved the space over at the school. It certainly is at the discretion of the town council if you want to keep it here.
I would prefer us to.
Actually, it seems to me that over the years, the number of people who come has diminished, not grown. So I think the idea of it being cramped is more valid maybe 10 years ago than it is right now.
All right, well, maybe what we'll do is, do you have any thoughts one way or the other? Anybody on this side of the table?
Yeah, I mean, I love having it here.
Well, let's see. What we'll do is maybe we'll do some kind of
can do it a
send out an
little-
invitation with an RSVP or something. We'll hold the,
Yeah, and we could do a little more, I don't want to use the word casual, but we have it, a little more of, a lot of stand-up and visiting around.
Yeah. Well,
Instead of
sitting down.
making sure everybody has a chair.
Well, that would require having different kinds of food, have more finger food and
Right,
rather than a
exactly.
plate. All right, all good points. Gene and I will get together and we'll start talking it through, and then we'll be in contact with the rest of the town council and with Barbara, and we'll move forward with this. The next point that I wanted to bring up is to talk about the sidewalks. I met a year ago with a representative from VDOT, and they would be happy to go ahead and repair the sidewalks that need to be repaired in the town. The issue that we had was the sidewalk in front of the county courthouse, that whole block between Jet Street and Porter Street on the east side. It is dangerous. It is because a lot of the bricks are old and have come up. There have cracks developed in there. They're truthfully also, they put in at one point some gray bricks, and so you don't have the traditional reddish brown bricks throughout the whole pathway. And then once it turns the corner and goes up the Porter Street, that is an absolute mess. VDOT, if they came through, would replace it with concrete. So the question that I pose to my fellow town council members is, how should we proceed? There is another point that I wish to bring up, which is that the town has judiciously avoided having an ownership of the sidewalks because, according to Mr. Bennett, if the town did the maintenance and improvements on the sidewalk beyond the scope of what VDOT would do, then the town would have to own that sidewalk. And that's an expense that I don't know if the town's ready to take on. And so I bring all these points and wanted to open this up to a discussion from town council members. Because we could certainly look for funding, for historic funding to try to get these repaired. We could certainly add it to a proposed TAP, which is a transportation alternative program request that the town will will make this spring. But I would welcome any thoughts from fellow town council members.
That gray brick I just, how did that get done? Who paid for it? Who's responsible for it?
Gene, I
Lengthy.
think the county did that. We didn't.
Yeah, I know that the steps, there was a recent repair that had to be done on the steps, and the town
Yeah, we
paid
did the
for
railing.
the railing that led up to that. I don't know when that was done.
I remember it being done.
Was it that recent?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, I've been in town,
Yeah.
11 years? We didn't pay for it.
No.
It was county. So I just,
Well, if it was the county, I've had informal discussions, and I don't think the county would be interested in it. But I certainly would want to, before we would move forward with any decision, I would want to get the input from the county in a more formal way, since whatever decision is
Right.
would impact them, and would appreciate getting their input. But tonight is really a preliminary to try to find out what are the questions we need to ask, what are the thoughts that members of the council have on this particular issue.
I think the last thing we want is liability of sidewalks.
I agree. I think something needs to
It's
be done
just-
on it.
And I think if we let VDOT do it, that will all those bricks can be saved and used by the county as they need them to repair whatever around their historic complex. I mean, it'll be a whole new look. The trees have got to go because the roots are,
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any trees along there. So I think it'll be a shock look-wise for maybe an hour for people. But then, I say that, but then if we let VDOT just go with it, what liability would the town have if we then enhance the look of it by, what do you call them, pavers? I'm just covering up the,
Yeah.
the what?
Putting
The
some,
veneer.
Yeah, the veneer, that would keep the brick look. I think, Martin, would, if we enhance what VDOT does, let's just say, we say, okay, VDOT, build the sidewalks, make them safe.
Right.
If the town enhances with just a veneer,
So the answer to that is that there's always the possibility for liability. If you take any responsibility for the control and maintenance of a public transportation project like that, then you're liable for failure to maintain it. The rules on slip and falls are often kind of difficult to understand. So if a hazard is open and obvious, then people have to take care of themselves, and you don't have any liability if they injure themselves on something that's open and obvious. It's really concealed dangers that you are liable for. And so then it comes down to how big was the discrepancy in the surface of the sidewalk, and was it a half inch or less? At some point it's so minor that you don't have any liability. There's like a little window. So below certain size, like I think it's half an inch, don't quote me on that, you don't have any liability because that's just normal, variations.
half-inch gaps you're talking about? or-
That gap's like a vertical gap
Okay.
between one
Difference
piece
in
and
height.
another. And then there's a window where you have liability, and then above that, it's open and obvious. So the easiest thing to do would be just to let VDOT do its thing and put concrete down there. One thing I will mention that I've seen done elsewhere that works is if you have an adjacent property owner that is willing to maintain it, then you have a three-party agreement. Basically, the town agrees to take care of the maintenance of the sidewalk, and then you require the adjacent property owner who wants the brick to stay there to do the actual maintenance. And so that's another possibility that would allow you to keep the brick if the adjacent property owners are agreeing to it. But where you have multiple adjacent property owners, you'd have to get all of them to agree.
Right. Well, fortunately, there's only one property owner,
Mm-hmm.
the county.
the county.
No, because they shovel snow, they keep the sidewalk clear.
Right.
So, well, I think there's actually a couple of things. I'd hate to see just a plain old concrete sidewalk because it takes away from the character of the other buildings. So one thought is, if we ask VDOT to do that, whether they can have tinted concrete and actually pattern it to look like brick, that would be one thing.
That's a good thought.
First, though, I think we could ask them if we got historic money from Richmond. I think there is a whole program for like revitalizing downtowns. As old as this is, and it's not that big a area, seems like there might be some historic money. And if VDOT would be agreeable to say, all right, if you get money in, then we can make this a brick sidewalk. And how they might do it is they actually lay concrete base.
Right,
the
and then
brick
put the
goes on.
concrete.
So something like that. But at a minimum, if it's tinted and then patterned to look like brick, that would make it less unattractive. And where now you have those little pieces of flagstone sort of stuck in there. The question would be whether they could get sections of granite and actually edge that with granite, because it would do two things. One, it would edge the sidewalk, but it would also create a curb for which everybody would park against. So it'd kind of be, they need to design it. I don't know if the ARB would have a
That was the question I had also. Is there an ARB?
ruling in there,
Right.
or review at least. So I think there's, there's a couple of different moving parts. But, again, bottom line is I'd hate to see just slabs of concrete.
Yeah.
I
actually,
think
those-
ARB says there's nothing, ARB doesn't control sidewalks and driveways and stuff like that, if I'm correct. Just as an aside.
Those vertical stones also have the advantage of barrier to the site of the sidewalk.
A little
They're
bit, yeah.
there. If they're there, you wouldn't see the concrete nearly.
Yeah,
Especially if, like you're saying, if it's patterned and colored.
right. But they're a huge trip hazard. And I'm sure VDOT would look at that and go, that's got to go.
But anything to serve as a barrier.
Right.
Yeah, but again, I grew up in New England, and you go into New England, and everywhere sidewalks and roads are edged with
Granite.
big, long pieces of granite.
Right.
And if that could be done down, so that the granite kind of comes even with the sidewalk, but it does two things. It covers that edge, but again, it also creates a curb up against which people can park. Because right now, the soil sort of rolls down in some places and not in others. And as we go around the corner, where the trees have to come out, that sidewalk's fairly high above the pavement. So the question is, does that come down, or again, do you put because again, if we get too high, then it becomes an OSHA issue, if someone's stepping off. There's a whole range of things. And again, they would have to do the design, and if they would agree to let us review it, so that we can kind of work jointly.
Another thing I'd mention is that several years ago, some garden club or someone put, maybe it had to
Jane,
with
do you
the-
mind talking into your microphone more?
Sorry.
A bit more?
Sorry, I was told that before. It may even have been related to the prison, but they put in bushes between the sidewalk and the road. So if when we take down the trees, we did something like that, it would look less stark.
Yeah, yeah. I know Claudia Mitchell, when she was here.
Yeah.
She worked really diligently to try to make that look more amenable and stuff. So I think that's where some of the original plantings came from and stuff. But yeah, that might be, maybe there's a narrow planting berm, at least on this side next to the sheriff's office.
Right. There's plenty of room on that
Plenty
side.
of room,
yeah.
and the height, you could do a slanted sort of planting berm.
Washington planners talked about whether or not to plant bulbs along that other grass strip there. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Yeah.
not important to this conversation.
Yeah, but I think, like you say, see if Richmond's got money.
Right.
See if VDOT would be willing to work with that money, because I'm sure they would probably want guidance, they would say, well.
I'm sure there's got, I think I would argue that the first point is seeing what the options are for historic preservation money.
Yes.
Yeah. called
Because
D-
obviously, you
called
go into Old Town
DHR
Alexandria,
first.
you know darn well that the town of Alexandria didn't pay for all those beautiful
Right.
brick
Right,
sidewalks.
right.
And it's not
Right.
putting the original brick back down, which could be saved, but just a
Yeah.
new brick surface.
In fact, that might be,
Yeah.
the thing is to contact Alexandria and find out
Have how that worked.
how that worked,
Yeah.
and who to
Yeah,
contact.
right, because undoubtedly they,
I can find
again,
out who to contact.
I'm sure VDOT did or somebody did the construction and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
falls within the.
yeah, because I think we all agree,
Yeah.
it's got to get rectified, and just how do we do it?
And it's an issue of both the Gay Street portion and the portion on Porter
Right.
Street between Gay Street and the beginning of Mount Salem.
Right.
One other thing that I haven't heard this officially from the county, but I did attend a building committee meeting of the county, and there was some talk that they were thinking of removing that back porch from the old sheriff's office, because they weren't using that
Doesn't
door
serve any
anymore.
purpose,
It
yeah.
doesn't serve any purpose, which, if that would happen, that would help clear up that area enormously.
Right.
And the tree really needs to come
Yeah.
out, because when we had a storm come through, that was,
Yeah.
A gentle reminder that any change like that would have to
Right.
get approved by the town's architectural review.
Right.
Because that's a significant
Right.
change to a historic building
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
within the historic.
Right,
But anyway, that's aside.
something like that, coupled with this, we say to the county.
yeah,
Look, we're trying to make the government center look nicer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's our approach.
you want me to contact my
Yeah.
person
Yeah, in Alexandria?
at Department of Human Resource, of
Historic
Historic
Resources.
Historic
Yes.
Resources?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they come inspect my house, they're my best friends now.
Okay.
Sounds like,
Sounds like a great idea.
talk with your best friends.
I
You've
will,
been appointed.
All
all
right.
right, I will,
Duly noted.
And then once you've heard, then I can get back to the VDOT people.
I'm
Mr.
just going
Haskins.
to get a name and then you
Okay,
can talk.
okay. That sounds good. Thank you for this discussion. It was helpful. All right, the next item, which we added, was about zoning fees.
Zoning fees, thank you, everybody. I had, as you know, from the September meeting, postponed it because there were so few people. I just wanted to get more input.
Actually, both of the following 2 points were brought up at the September meeting and were deferred.
Yes. So what we did was we meaning Steve, Barbara, and I, we took everybody's comments from the public hearing and from chatting with a couple of other people, that really to, as much as possible, have just one fee for everything and everybody, forget the residential, commercial difference. So we have done that, we listened to everybody. The only place that you'll see is the, some of the technical reviews, the site plan reviews, because it really is, in most cases, a major difference between residential and commercial. So that's the only way, the only area that we kept things separate. And we've also added in here, per the discussion about the number of hours the zoning administrator should spend at the town expense. Most towns and cities make the applicant pay for everything from the very first hour. But we've got too good a relationship with everything here in town, so, and talking to Steve and Martin, and we came up with 4 hours. So the town will,
And then what is the rate after the 4 hour, free hours?
what the going rate for the zoning administrator at that time is.
All right, we should probably refer to whatever that going rate is, whether it's the, what we're
Well,
using
you'll
as
want
the
to, you'd have to
benchmark.
update.
Yeah, we don't want to put a rate in here.
No, I'm not saying put a rate, but refer to a specific benchmark.
Well,
that
it
you're
says
using.
that the zoning administrator charges to the town, so that is the hourly rate. The way it was.
That's
And I
fair.
think we could give an applicant at the time, so
Exactly,
they know.
Okay, what the consultant's rate is.
Yes,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. And then the only other question, are you finished?
Sure, question away.
And I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but it just really jumped out at me, which is the boundary line adjustment request for 2,500 per acre.
Steve, want to jump in there?
I don't want to say.
Under the subdivision
Yeah,
ordinance?
I don't want to say there's a particular standard, but I looked at a couple other ordinances, and this is a number that seemed to fit. So, and you know the amount of time it takes.
And I guess that's what I wanted to hear from you, is that it takes a lot of time to do
Yes.
it. And if you had, say, someone who's doing a 1.5 acre or, say, 2.25 acre, is it 2.25 times 2,500?
Yes,
Or is it 3 times? You round it up to the next whole number?
I didn't think about it, but I would use the fraction and just
Yeah.
figure it out.
So we should probably make sure that we record that.
even on a small request that's with everybody willing, still takes a bit of time and effort.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you for answering that. So is this now, we've had the public hearing, is this to be adopted?
Yes,
Is that a
this
motion?
is here. I make a motion that we adopt the revised zoning fees and charges.
All right. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right. Is there a, sorry, Gene, I wasn't next to my microphone like I should have been. Are there any questions? Hearing none, a roll call vote to approve the revised zoning fees and charges?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. It has passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is also an item that we brought up at the at the September meeting. I received a request from the minister at Trinity Episcopal Church about closing Gay Street between Warren Avenue and Jet Street. The decision rests with the Virginia Department of Transportation in consultation with the local sheriff and with the state police department, as I understand it. But the Trinity Church has to make application, and I thought it would behoove the town council to have a resolution, if the council deems it appropriate, have a resolution of support of the application. And we discussed it briefly at our meeting on the September, but I think one of the things is Main Street, there's a lot of, I recall pre-COVID, and I suspect it will be the case post-COVID, there are a lot of people walking around in the dark, and I have driven through Sperryville on Halloween night, and it's scary. And I'd like to have, not just for the school, ghouls and goblins, yeah. And I want to create some kind of safe zone, and I know the church, from what I understand from the minister, is planning to use the green space next to the church office, which is across the street from the Trinity Church itself, so that they would be having families, children crossing the street at that point. And so that's why I would propose it. I would also propose that the minister be in touch with the other properties along that section of the street, make sure that she gets their approval before this goes, she submits her application. But I would make a motion that we support the application from Trinity Episcopal Church as a property owner in the town to, if they make application to VDOT to close Gay Street between Warren Avenue and Jet Street for October 31st, the Halloween celebration.
I presume they plan to have it open to the entire community.
Yes, they will. Since I've made the motion before we have comments, I'd love to have a second if I could.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. So your point, Joe, is a good one, which is that much like the rest of the town, it is open to the entire community.
I would just point out that Sperryville now has gotten VDOT to close the Main Street, I guess, the whole thing. Yeah, so that this is not unprecedented.
Right. I think having been here and walked by and seen the crowds, I think it'd be, especially because you've got the inn doing a lot, and people aren't just going to go to the church, they're going to cut across Gay Street over to the area where Elizabeth's planning on having everything, or Trinity, I shouldn't say just Elizabeth. So I think absolutely it's an excellent excellent idea that we do a resolution supporting, and that way she can have that to take to the sheriff's office.
Or to VDOT.
Right.
Mr. Krim, at the very last minute, very graciously has written something up for us. Do you
Yes, sir.
mind using,
Did you want
reading
me to
it?
read that, what I had here?
If you don't mind.
So this would be the form of a resolution. Whereas Trinity Episcopal Church desires to close off a block of Gay Street between Warren Avenue and Jet Street in the town of Washington on the evening of October 31st, 2022. And whereas the town council supports the church's application for street closure for October 31st, 2022, now therefore be it resolved that the town council of the town of Washington supports Trinity Episcopal Church's application to VDOT for closure of Gay Street between Warren Avenue and Jet Street on the evening of October 31st, 2022.
Perfect.
Okay. I didn't capture what you were saying a few minutes ago with regard to consultation with other property owners in the sheriff's office, but I think that's implied.
Well, sir, it may be in the application from
Yeah,
Trinity,
it
and
may
we're
be
just
right.
supporting it, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for putting that together.
Yes, sir.
That's excellent.
So I propose that resolution. Do we need a second for the resolution before we vote
So
on
is
it?
this in substitute for the motion you just made? This is.
I guess it would be.
Then yes, I think. we would
Okay,
go
so
ahead
this
with
is a
second.
substitution for my motion, which is a resolution that we support the application from Trinity Episcopal Church to VDOT to close Gay Street between Warren Avenue and Jet Street.
Yes.
And are you comfortable with seconding that
Absolutely.
resolution?
I
So we have the resolution which Mr. Krim read off. Roll call vote to approve?
Yes,
Yes.
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 Thank you all very much. All right. VML meeting update, Mr. Schneider.
Okay, excuse me, because I don't remember the exact date, but VML had a good meeting on FOIA that I attended.
Brad, for the record, you want to remind people what VML is?
Okay.
For the uninitiated.
VML is Virginia Municipal League, which we are a member of. It's a tremendous resource. The more I interact with them, the more I learn what they have. And while I was there, I talked to different people, collected different business cards. They have resources that can help us on a variety of different issues.
Right.
So this was specifically about freedom of information and conflict of interest. That was the two primary topic areas. And I'll share these, I'll pass these down. They have a really good book. Mr. Krim has seen this before. I'm going to need, Barbara, we're probably going to need one more copy to give to Patrick
And Drew?
and Drew. I've got one here for Drew. Okay, or just order one. Maybe you can just order it and they'll just, because it's nicely bound.
Yeah, this is nice.
But in any case, the discussion, again, first they talked about the FOIA and how so many communities are struggling with it because of all kinds of issues that are coming up. I won't go into the details of all of that, but the booklet clearly lays out Virginia code, how things are requested, what can be requested and such. One of the things I did find interesting is that when a FOIA request is made, the clerk responds with, here's what the cost will be for producing all the materials. If that is not responded to within, I think it's 30 days?
30 days.
30 days, the request voids itself. You don't get hung up, waiting and waiting and waiting. And you don't have to pursue that. You simply said, this is what the FOIA will cost, and if they don't respond to you, it expires.
So basically, the time limit that we're under is not starting until they've responded back to you with approval of the fees.
Right. And then you go through it. The document does cover, electronic emails and all this kind of thing. They were a little reluctant to say, here's what you should do and, strict guidelines. But generally, if it is town business from an email perspective, use your town email. Don't use a personal one. Because if things have to be searched out, you really don't want them going through personal email records. Just keep it limited to the town email address. So that was important.
Mr. Mayor, could I add something to that? Conversely, don't use your town email address for personal
Yes.
emails, particularly if they are somewhat sensitive, like if you're emailing somebody about a county matter that is not directly a town matter, but you are interested in it. Just use your personal email for that, please.
Thank you.
The other portion of this meeting was the conflict of interest. This is becoming a growing issue. They cited 2 or 3 particular instances in Virginia where elected officials, had town and county level type of officials, got into serious trouble. There were court cases that were pulled out of these because people either didn't recuse themselves, they acted inappropriately with information they had gotten through general conversation or a meeting or something like that. So they really stressed that when you run into a meeting or when you are receiving information that may be confidential, proprietary as it relates to whether it's a real estate transaction or any type of financial transaction involving your jurisdiction, all of that needs to be kept confidential because even a inadvertent sharing can come back on us. So the other thing that was brought out is when, say, like in a town council or county boards or any board level meetings, something like that, if any of the members of such boards or whatever have a direct connection to a topic of interest, they must recuse themselves. They may not sit at the table when it's being discussed. And it was a little gray, but even for them to go into the audience, they cannot voice opinion or comment on the issue. So again, there's a little bit of gray, but it's still pretty clear. Virginia Code has done a pretty good job of defining that. I think, Mr. Chairman, you can probably confer that. This is becoming an issue, so.
Yeah, and another thing and along the same lines is that the person who's recused themselves cannot participate in a closed session discussion. Can't even just sit there.
Right. That was another part. The last part of it was the Public Records Act, and again, that was pretty straightforward. It talked about how long we keep records, because we can dispose of records. Generally, with technology we have today, it's not that difficult to turn things to digital and just keep them on a reoccurring basis. But things like water bills and tax bills, everything else after 7?
I forget.
I can't remember now off the top of my head. I turned to our counsel on that. But there is a specific window that after a certain point, those can be disposed of. We do not have to maintain those. So it was very informative, but there's definitely some clear rules. And I bring that up only because we as a town and this body has done a fabulous job of becoming more professional, more formal with our meetings and how we conduct ourselves. And so just to be sure that we don't stumble going down the road, that's why I got a copy of this for everybody.
Great,
So
thank you.
Your own reference.
And I would urge you, thank you, Brad, for that and for this. And I would urge all council members, I think everyone has had it, but to attend a FOIA session. The VML does them on a regular basis.
Yes, they do.
And the county, I know, has scheduled them and invited us to attend them in the past. That's where I attended the one that I went to. Thank you again for this information.
Yeah, it's not any, I don't believe that there's any certification per se, but
Right.
all elected officials do have to attend some level of instruction or review.
Yeah. All right. Next on the item is an initial consideration of an ordinance regarding solar panels. Mr. Guyerson, are you going to lead us in this conversation?
I'll be happy to.
Thank you. I'll let you also dive deep into swimming pools when that's
Okay.
the appropriate time.
Carefully.
Couple pages in front of you. First, need to thank the Planning Commission for working on them and Martin for trying to get my notes and the Planning Commission notes in an ordinance format. But the bottom line on the ordinance is that solar panels on roofs are permitted, rooftop solar panels are permitted everywhere in town as long as they go through the Architectural Review Board. So that's sort of the bottom line on, I'll say, on residential, but also commercial. And then the other major
And
point.
if I read correctly, and as long as they're not visible.
Yeah. And then, so that would be a call by the ARB to take a
Right.
look at it. And then the other major point is any solar facility, energy facility would require a special use permit. So if it's a facility that somebody puts in to I'll say sell the electricity, that would require a special use permit. So that's really the bottom line. We've had to add some definitions, and at the last Planning Commission meeting, they added what temporary, how long temporary was. They were questioning that, so we made it 30 days. Then, of course, they added that special use permit is required pretty much everywhere in town for a generating facility, solar energy facility, or ground-mounted solar facility.
So this gets back to under the rural residential, is basically it's saying you can have a special use permit to build, like, I don't know what they call it, but a solar panel farm or something.
Farm,
Correct. Yeah.
Farm.
And that can only occur on rural residential.
Yeah.
Okay.
And only with the approval.
And
Right.
so, okay, so that's the difference between an energy facility, a solar energy facility, and a solar facility.
So the goal here is to move this to public hearing in November?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have a question.
Yeah.
What in the world is a temporary photovoltaic facility? And why is that allowed without any?
So I was trying to figure out how best to describe that. And over the weekend, I was at Blandy Farm. There was a you can rent goats to clear areas, and they had an electric fence up that was temporary, a temporary electric fence. They had a array of solar to generate the electricity for the fence while the goats were clearing the area. And I said, well, that's a good example of that, and I'd use it if I could.
Or for like, somebody, when they put up those temporary lights, they'll have a solar panel for that. So would that be
But
similar?
I think that isn't then under
Yeah.
traffic signs.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that you can use temporary voltaic facilities for is campers. If you have a cell phone charger that runs on solar, or you have something that for a camping van or something of that nature, that's what they're primarily used for.
So let me ask you another one, just because I'm just trying to make your life miserable for a couple of minutes, which is if you have one of these night lights outside, one of these garden things to highlight a path, and it has a photovoltaic cell, but it's not something that you have for 30 minutes. If it's in already, is it grandfathered in? Is that something that needs to go in front of the Planning Commission? Is there?
Temporary ones you can do.
Right, but normally you
more
would
than
have
30
that more than 30 days. And, I mean, it's tiny, it's something that's
Yeah. That's a great question. And I don't really have an answer for you, except if it's past the 30 days, then and there was a complaint, we'd have to address
I
it.
think I would argue that we could include something here that exempts things like lighting for your
Garden light.
Garden
lighting
lights
for your
or
walks. I mean, I
pathway
really don't
lights.
think we want to get into
No, I don't think we
regulating
do.
incidental exterior lighting or something to that effect.
Right, but there are light poles that have a panel mounted on them.
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
So that would fall under,
Right,
I mean, if,
It's for
yeah.
some sort of public utility.
But we
Okay.
could, like you said, Joe, we could just add something in that exempts the.
Correct, yeah.
The low garden, little garden
Right,
lighting.
yeah.
Incidental.
Any of those that have
Right.
a little self-contained
Right,
solar.
so it's a sort of a rampant thing in the quantity. I did have to deal with a cemetery situation that had flashing lights and color lights that were all solar, temporary solar, ornamental type things.
Well, if you look at the Sperryville Cemetery, there are a number of those.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's
So,
changing dynamic with a lot of different places.
I can do that in my graveyard.
Mr. Krim, do you have any suggestions about language that might help us through this quandary?
I'm still trying to figure out why the phrase "for a period of not more than 30 days" was added, because where it appears in the definition is kind of confusing. Does it mean not connected to the electrical grid for a period of not more than 30 days? Because that I don't really understand that. So I'm not sure why that 30 days is there at all.
The question came up, what's temporary?
Well,
With
it's
the planning
temporary if
commission.
it's not affixed to the ground or any structure and doesn't exceed 10 square feet.
Maybe we just need
That's
to
what
better
temporary
define it, what temporary is, satisfy the
but-
planning commission.
Okay, well, what was the danger that they were trying to avoid?
Something being up permanently without any approvals.
If it's under 10 square feet and not permanently affixed to the ground, if it's just like one of those garden lights,
Let's strike it then.
okay, that would be my preference.
I'm not sure I feel comfortable taking this for a public meeting without some more thinking it through. Could we, Mr. Krim, could we give this to you between you and Mr. Geyerson to go ahead and kind of clean up some of these questions that we asked and some of the scenarios we brought up? I think the Planning Commission has done great work, but I think it's been now brought to the town council. So
Yeah.
as a town council, I task it to you and Mr. Geyerson to try to clean up some of these questions, and then we can bring it up.
And the two specific questions
Yeah.
that we're digging at are the further definition of temporary, if needed, or as appropriate, and then some sort of thing, catch-all that gets us out of regulating
Incidental
lights or
Yep.
whatever we want to
Yeah.
define. I don't.
Garden or pathway lighting, something, whatever.
Well, yeah, probably something else, slightly more liberal definition than that, but yeah, something that gets us out of dealing with,
Right,
accessory lighting
right, get out of the minutia.
in gardens, et cetera. Because any of us have a stomach for trying to regulate that. If it's a problem that's brought to before the council, that's a different issue, but until it is,
Yeah.
I see no reason.
Well,
Yeah,
I have an issue, 512C subsection 1, where it says, in locations not visible from a public street or way. Okay, that's gonna be difficult, because you can go down the street here and see the roof of this building.
So we're never going to put them on this building.
Yeah,
Without a certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah.
So it's either or.
Right.
okay.
So it leaves it to the ARB to say, okay, well, it's
Right.
on the back slope of, one of the houses that's here on Gay Street.
Yeah.
Therefore, we'll consider that reasonably accommodating to the,
Yeah, but you're gonna run into the issue here, right? And Steve, you can probably address this. Customer's gonna say, I can't use the backside because that's north,
but then,
and I need a south.
Correct.
that's not our problem, Brad. It literally isn't. I mean, we've told you what the the regulation is. If you can't meet that in the historic district, then you can't.
The property owner can't meet
Right, the
that.
property owner can't meet it, then they can't do it. It's simple.
Yeah.
And if
So-
we try to start down that road of guessing every scenario,
You know,
We'll
they
have
can come and they can,
lawsuits.
yeah.
Otherwise.
I know it's annoying, but.
because I'm in the industry,
Yeah.
and I see it, and I read various articles, because homeowner associations get into this, and it's a tangled mess. And the homeowner associations, in most all cases, and maybe you can verify or not, lose.
Yeah, but they also don't have legal legislative elected.
Agreed, but, you know, it's this, you know, restrictions, you know, what's visible, what's not visible. I just think, whether you say appropriateness or not visible from a public street, I think is going to come back and bite us.
Well, let me speak to that. Well, the reason why I put that in there is that if something's not visible from the public street, it's really not a historic preservation issue.
ARB
Just
takes.
like the,
Yeah, I'm sorry, go
just
ahead.
like the interior of a structure is not subject to ARB review. If you have something that's not visible from any public street, your governmental interest in preserving the historic look of a roof that nobody can see unless they're on private property is very limited.
And the ARB has historically taken the position that, like, if you can't see it from the street, we're not.
Right.
We may ask to see the plans, but we're not going to make a decision one way or another, take a position one way or another.
Without getting into the minutia here, you can't see it from the street. Now, is that if you're standing at the building, or if you're standing half a block down? Because if I stand
I
at the
believe,
street,
I
I
believe,
can't see
I
this
believe
roof.
that's where it gets into the certificate of I mean,
Right.
that's the
Right.
ARB's judgment to make, and which could be appealed to us.
Right.
If
Because
someone,
again,
yeah.
if I stand, you know, in the front of the building or just in that side parking lot, I might be able to see, but I
I
really
know.
can't. But if I go down the street another 150 feet, yeah, I can clearly see the roof.
Then.
I'll take
that's
a
just
straw poll here and suggest that perhaps that none of the members of this council are going to argue about that.
Yeah.
So
But maybe
that-
I'm wrong, and we don't want to tie the hands of our future.
You can put that in the definition as to what
Yeah, I mean,
street view
the
is.
way it's written is from any public street, way, or place. But if you want to make it from the adjacent public way or street, then that would be another way to handle that, so that your scenario where you're 150 feet down the road and it's a somewhat attenuated part of your visual field, then that's fine. We can do it, we can write it that way.
I don't know how many,
I'm fine the way it is.
you know, I don't know how many properties would, you know, fall into the category where they need that southern exposure. It has the conditions and stuff.
I think we just have to leave that to the ARB, because
Right.
We'll have to deal with it.
it has to go to the ARB.
Mr. Mayor, may I add something else? I recently worked on some architectural review board guidelines for solar panels and trying to come up with some kind of guidance beyond what the ordinance said, and it's a very similar ordinance to this one. And so I made a distinction between contributing structures and non-contributing structures, because I think with contributing structures, you're going to want to make sure it's pretty darn hard to spot.
Right.
So, you know, that's something that the ARB can address through its guidelines, as well as when you start getting into some of these issues. So, you know, it's really going to need to, in the way I drafted the guidelines, which haven't been adopted yet, with the contributing structure, it has to match the roof color and be flat, just, you know,
That's the pitch.
match the pitch of the roof.
Right.
With non-contributing structures, you get a little bit looser. You know, you might just any kind of dark color or silver or something that's not going to stand out because it could be somebody's roof color anyway.
Well, that's kind of what happened with Chuck Hackery. There was some objection to it. Panels he got were all black, the roof is black. I mean, if you look at it, yes, you can see there's a solar array up there.
You'll have to look close.
But,
Yeah.
but just as passing by, you wouldn't make,
Right.
and, you know, and again, architecture changes. Our world is demanding changes.
Right.
People are,
Right.
you know, facilitating these things. But, okay, I can go.
Yeah. There's a historic structure, historic property in the historic district in the city of Manassas that's halfway between my house and my office, and I passed it for a year before somebody told me there were solar panels on the roof. And I looked and said, by golly, there really are.
Well, years ago, back in the 80s, when we had the first energy crisis, my dad and I installed solar hot water panels. And they always questions, oh, they're ugly, you're gonna see them and everything else. And the thing we'd always ask the resident was like, what's the color of the shingles in your house? Most of them couldn't tell you, so it's like, you don't look at your roof. You know?
All right.
Anyway,
Okay.
One last question. Do we really identify commercial beekeeping in rural residential?
Yes,
Yes,
We do.
yes.
Okay,
yes.
yep,
That's existing.
believe it or not.
okay.
All right, we're moving on.
Okay.
So, Mr. Krim, you and Mr. Geyerson are tasked and are comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we would potentially set it up to do this again in November.
In
and then
November.
December, we would be able to move.
To have the public
Prove it.
Right.
hearing. Yep. All right. Now we go into pools, Mr. Geyerson.
Try to keep it brief. There were some definitions that needed to be changed, and again, thanks to the Planning Commission and Mr. Krim for pulling those together. And then the issues with the overlying issue with the pool is it accessory to the main structure, and then most cases it would be residential, and is a pool accessory. Of course, the Planning Commission felt it was, and then had some limitations on the size of the pool as an accessory to a main structure. One of the questions came up is, how high should a pool be above the average grade of a yard? And we tossed it back and forth between 1 and 2 feet, and ended up at 2 feet, because that's generally what a small retaining wall would be in a yard. And then as far as visibility, we ran into the same question we did with solar, and have on page 3 some pool standards. And I think the second one, yes, the second one, pool shall be located and screened so as not to be visible from adjoining properties or streets, and the Planning Commission add, with the exception of properties owned by the same entity. So then we also added some information, an ordinance provision regarding the discharge of the pool water, which ultimately affects the wastewater treatment plant.
That was
Yeah.
critical.
And I think we've got the language hammered out on that quite well, but the idea is that the water's not supposed to be dumped into the sewer system.
No, please.
So as I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I read under that number 3, that it says under 510 pool standards on page 3, number 3, it says
Okay.
pool should not be located in the front or side yard setback area. The setback area is the 15 feet or the 20 feet.
That's correct.
So if someone wants to put a pool in their front yard that's not in the setback area, they would be allowed?
No.
Okay, because it says, because what this says is it's only in the setback area that it's not allowed.
Pool shall not be located in the front or side yard area, except
This
that pool is
setback- it says
located.
setback area.
In the setback area.
We can clear that up.
I think if you just strike setback, you solve your problem.
Yep.
Solve the problem for me, anyway. I don't know about the rest of my
Yeah.
fellow council members.
Or do you want to keep the setback as
Well, I don't know what the
modifying the side yard?
Yeah,
I don't know if the necessity of having the setback term in there anyway, since I think the whole idea is to not have it in our front or side
That's
yards.
correct.
Okay.
That was the intent.
and you would, when you were filing the plans, you'd have to ask for an exception to in the set. If you're in a lot that's greater than a half an acre and you could put it in your side yard, you'd have to ask for an exception to put it in the setback area anyway. I'm just saying, we could add in setback, find it, but
Yeah.
someone would, that's already part of the ordinance on building anything is that it can't be in the setback
Yeah, right,
access
yeah.
area
Right.
without a exception.
All right, so after saying all that.
After saying all that, I don't think we need to include setback area. I think we
Okay.
should strike setback
Okay, so,
and just say it can't be in the front or side yard unless it's in a lot greater than a half acre, and then, of course, you put it in the side yard as well. But you still can't put it in your front yard.
That's correct.
Period.
Okay.
no. So
Yes.
you're saying that it can't be, what we're saying 3 is if we take the word setback out, then it cannot be located in the front or side yard.
Correct.
Correct.
That's
Except
correct.
if you're in a lot greater than half an acre, in which case you can put it in your side yard.
Okay, all right.
But what if it's a shotgun half acre?
Then it's going to be difficult to screen it.
And you'd have to put it into your setback area, which you'd have to get an exemption to do.
Right, thank you. Just being
All right.
devil's advocate here. Okay,
Yep, no,
fine.
that's fair. That's a good question.
So on page 3, the definitions of pool does not include landscaping pools for aquatic vegetation or fish. Do we want to put a size on that? I mean, we're saying that, you know, we've got pools greater than 100 gallons. Should that be limited? And the second period of that, someone say, well, this is a landscaping pool. I don't need anything because, and they're using aquatic plants to purify the water. So they're going to swim in it anyway. Do we want to make a limitation of what a landscaping pool is?
Yeah,
Because again, I think that's one of the scenarios where if we start trying to define it, we're
Okay,
going to
yeah.
table of definitions. That's just my
okay.
thought.
I
on it.
agree.
The last item I have is on page 4, item B. I would strike upon request at the end of the paragraph. I think we should require that they produce proof that they have disposed of the water properly, not for us to wait to require asking for it.
All
Good
right.
point.
All right.
By the way, some of the formatting dropped out of this, in section 18 from the sewer ordinance. Subsection A is the existing language. I just added the designation subsection A. Subsection B is entirely new language.
Okay.
So
Got
those
it.
they all should have been underlined.
Oh,
Otherwise
okay,
not.
got it, got it.
Was there any discussion of requiring fencing or something to block trespassing or drowning?
It's
Well,
a
that would be
building
in-
code
yeah.
requirement.
It's a what?
It's a building code requirement to have
Oh,
fencing.
okay, good.
All right. It sounds like that we have, do you mind making a motion
I'd
with the two?
move that we're just doing it, we can't actually approve it tonight, right?
No, we're doing it.
Yeah, so I would
Authorizing a
move,
public hearing.
I would move that we make the two, strike the two provisions that the council discussed. That would include the word setback on page 3, section 5-10, section 3, and strike the phrase upon request on page 4 in subsection B at the very end of the sentence. And that the council, once those edits are made, the council advertise and hold a public hearing and consider approval of said ordinance in November, at its regular meeting in November.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Gail? Any other discussion? If not, roll call vote to approve?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
And so the solar panel, that's going to come back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll come back
back
again and we'll
in,
deal
yes.
with it in December.
Yeah. I want to take a moment again to thank the Planning Commission, working with Mr. Garrison for an enormous amount of work that they did, untangling what are very difficult issues and very important issues that they were resolved, and I feel they showed a great fortitude in getting through this, and on behalf of the town council, we are grateful for their work on this. Finally, we have learned from the county administrator that the county is no longer doing a review of fireworks applications for fireworks displays that will occur in the town of Washington. This came on to us quite suddenly, and so we have already had this application in front of us. It appears to be in order from a preliminary review. We have sought to get confirmation from the county as to the protocol. We were unable to get a hold of someone from the appropriate people in the county before tonight's meeting. I don't want to delay this application because it is occurring, I think, at the end of this month, on the 29th.
Yes.
Yes.
And as I said, it appears to be in order. I think the one thing that I would task Ms. Batson to do is to contact the fire department to ensure that they're aware of this and to find out if they have a protocol. And then I would like to propose that we set up a task force, and I would be happy to serve on that task force and ask if Brad, you would serve on a task force, and Joe, if you wouldn't mind serving on the task force to look at developing a protocol for us to use for applications for fireworks in the future.
Might I suggest, Mr. Mayor, since we have adopted a previous guideline on fireworks, that we simply adopt the county's process and paperwork? Since it's the same process that's been in place and has served us well in recent years? Rather than
And I would be,
having an additional task force?
I would be happy, but I don't know all the process at
Right.
this point.
Yeah, we can certainly go to the Emergency Services Office, find out if there's anything
Right.
behind this.
Right.
But it's easy enough to change the headings and everything else, the
Yeah.
paperwork.
Yeah.
Probably will add, duration.
Right, well, I mean, our guidelines
Yeah.
already point to that, that's all I was saying.
Yeah.
So we would reference the town's current guidelines
I have a
on
concern
said
on
subject.
this application specifically. It says number 9, the firing of the display fireworks will occur on October 29th, beginning at 8:15 and ending at 8:45. That's a 30-minute long fireworks display.
Well, no. Right, because if you, yeah, if you go to the
Okay.
back of this page,
Okay,
here, it's a 3-minute.
3-minute show, okay.
It'll just
Thank you.
occur within the 30-minute
See what
window.
happens when I just fly through these things?
Yes.
Okay, good, 3-minute show, okay.
Yeah, so I think, do we have anything written down, Barbara, of our guidelines for fireworks? We do.
Yeah, we
All
do.
right, so why don't you and I, Joe, figure that out? I can stop over Emergency Services Office and just chat to them, and also check with the Washington Fire Department, see if they have any suggestions or recommendations for all of that.
They're both CC.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I was just saying, generally making a comment. So
Right.
I agree we should approve it tonight, and then I think that just a simple, I mean, we can all discuss it in the meantime, but
Right.
a simple, that we, precluding us discovering anything unique or special.
Right.
That when we report back in November, we would simply adopt the county's process as our own.
Exactly.
And hold our current guidelines in place.
Exactly, and I was not asking you to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
And-
I'm sure you weren't, I just thought I'd go ahead and
Yeah.
get it out there. That,
Yep.
yeah,
And
there's
then I
no,
think after, again, let's, okay with this, I think in the November and then going forward, then we can address long-term what our thoughts are
Right.
with respect to firework display in town.
That's fine.
Okay.
So it sounds like the Public Works Committee has taken on this task,
Good plan.
which I'm perfectly happy with.
what was your question?
Will there be any problem with the fact that the certification for the pyrotechnician will have expired? Okay, good, good.
Yeah, got that one early.
Good catch
Yeah.
by both you, Barbara, and Jean, to see that. All right, without any further ado, I guess we have a motion to approve this application.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? If not, roll call vote to approve. Jean?
Yes?
Yes.
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 All right, thank you very much. That is the end of our show for the night.
No public forum?
Oh,
There's
public
nobody
forum.
here.
And
Public.
unfortunately,
I open it for the public.
Public left.
Nancy left.
Ben, put your phone down. The public. I open the public forum. Is there anything from the public?
according to Brad, I can't move into the audience and talk back, so
That's it. So obviously, we've had a long meeting, and I am closing the public forum, and I now seek a motion to adjourn,
I so move.
and a second,
Second?
and a roll call vote. Jean?
Yes?
yes.
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 Thank you. We are officially closed. Sorry to tease you like that, Ben.
Okay,